take a look around you. Seriously, take a second and actually look at the room you're in. Your walls, the windows, the glass on your phone, even the road outside your house. Every single bit of it relies on one thing: sand. It's the most consumed resource on the planet after water. We use 50 billion tons of it every single year. Let that sink in for a moment. 50 billion tons. Now, you might be thinking, wait, the world is covered in deserts. How can we possibly run out of sand? And that right there is the $1 million mistake. Or more accurately, the $3 trillion mistake. Here's the deal. Desert sand is useless for construction. It's been weathered by wind for millennia, making the grains round and smooth. They're like tiny marbles. If you try to build a skyscraper with marbles, the whole thing just slides apart. What we need is sharp sand, the stuff found in rivers, lakes, and oceans. It's got the jagged edges that lock together to create strong concrete. But here's where the story takes a turn. We are consuming this sharp sand twice as fast as the Earth can naturally replace it. Since 2022, global consumption has jumped another 15%. Why? Because the post-pandemic infrastructure boom collided head-on with a world that's urbanizing at a breakneck pace. We're building vertical cities faster than we can find the dirt to hold them up. Here's the part that blew me away when I first saw the data. The Global Concrete Price Index. It's up 28% in just 3 years. This isn't just some abstract commodity fluctuation. This is a structural shift. It's the sound of the foundation of the global economy starting to crack. And honestly, we're just getting started. If the world is covered in deserts, but we're seeing a violent global scramble for specific grains of dirt, you have to ask yourself, what happens when the riverbeds run dry? Let that sink in. Here's where it gets strange. And this is the part nobody's talking about. Okay, let's talk about the real problem. It's not just that your driveway is getting more expensive to pour. There's a double squeeze happening here that ties your housing market directly to the AI revolution. We've talked about concrete, but what about the silicon in your pocket? That comes from sand too. But not just any river sand. We're talking about high-purity quartz, or HPQ. The price for this specific silica is now hitting $12,000 per ton. That is a 200% jump in a very short window. Why? Because every AI chip, every data center, and every high-end screen requires ultra-pure sand to function. So we have a finite supply of sharp sand being pulled in two opposite directions. On one side, you have the massive heavy demand for concrete and roads. On the other, you have the high-margin, high-tech demand for silicon wafers. To think of it as a tug-of-war for the literal bedrock of our civilization. On one end of the rope is the construction industry, where material costs now account for 12% of the total build, up from just 7% a few years ago. On the other end is Silicon Valley. And guess who's winning? The tech giants have the margins to pay whatever it takes for that sand. The average homebuyer? Not so much. So here is the mechanism of the trap. As sand becomes scarcer, the price of everything built with it inflates. Your rent goes up because new buildings are more expensive to construct. Your tech gets pricier because the raw silica is under pressure. And the scary part, there is no plan B for sand. You can't just print more riverbed. It takes thousands of years of geological erosion to create the grains we need. We're essentially spending our geological inheritance in a single generation. I know sounds dramatic, but look at the data. In India, interstate transport bans are already in effect. In Singapore, import volumes have dropped 12% because neighboring countries like Malaysia and Indonesia have literally banned the export of sea sand. They've realized that their sand is more valuable than the cash they're getting for it. When countries start hoarding dirt, that's when you know the math has stopped working. Let that land. Here's the part you need to pay attention to. This is the part I find wild. Now, let's zoom out for a second and follow the money, because in every crisis, there's someone holding a golden shovel. In the world of sand, that's not just a metaphor. We're seeing the rise of what people are calling the sand mafia. It sounds like something out of a Netflix thriller, but the numbers are very real. Illegal sand mining is now an estimated $2.3 billion black market. In parts of the world, people are literally being murdered over truckloads of river silt. Why? Because the demand is so high and the legal permits are so hard to get that organized crime has stepped in to fill the gap. They're dredging rivers at night, destroying local ecosystems, and selling the sharp sand to builders who are desperate to keep their projects on schedule. It's a gritty, dangerous, and almost entirely invisible shadow economy. But it's not just the black market profiting. Look at the corporate giants. Companies like Boskalis and Jan de Nul, these are the dredging kings of the world. They own the specialized, high-tech fleets required to harvest deep-sea sand. While general construction firms are seeing their margins shrink due to rising costs, these specialized aggregate providers have seen their EBITDA margins expand by 18%. They control the bottleneck. It's a classic gatekeeper play. If you own the equipment that can reach the sand that nobody else can get to, you set the price. And right now, the price is going up. We're seeing a massive transfer of wealth from the middle-class homebuyer to the industrial extraction giants. Every time a new land reclamation project starts in Dubai or Singapore, billions of tons of sand are moved, and the gatekeepers take their cut. It's a silent tax on the physical growth of our world, and if you're not paying attention to who controls the extraction, you're missing the biggest part of the story. Think about that next time you see a construction crane on the horizon. That crane isn't just lifting steel, it's lifting the price of the ground it's standing on. The question is, how long can we keep digging before the hole we're creating becomes too deep to climb out of? Let that sink in. Now, this is the part that gets really interesting. And this is the part nobody's talking about. Let's put this into perspective. I want you to think back to the 1973 oil crisis. That was the moment the world realized that our entire economic engine was fueled by a finite liquid buried deep underground. It changed everything. It gave birth to strategic reserves, alternative energy, and a new way of thinking about resource security. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but sand is the new oil. Only it's even more fundamental. You can find alternatives for oil. You can use nuclear, solar, or wind. But what's the alternative for sand? We haven't found one that works at scale. Economists like Nouriel Roubini, the guy who famously predicted the 2008 crash, are calling this a mega-threat. He argues that physical inflation from raw material shortages is a monster that central banks can't fight with interest rates. You can raise rates all you want, but it won't put more sharp sand in the river. Here is the terrifying difference between the oil crisis and the sand crisis. We have a strategic petroleum reserve. Most developed nations have months of oil tucked away for an emergency. Do we have a strategic sand reserve? No, not even close. We operate on a just-in-time delivery model for the very material that makes up our cities. If the sand supply chain snaps, construction stops. Period. This is what I call a stagflationary trap. You have slowing growth because construction becomes too expensive, but you have rising prices because the raw materials are so scarce. It's a pincer movement on your personal wealth. Your home is your biggest asset, right? But if the cost to maintain or replace the infrastructure around that home, the roads, the sewers, the bridges is skyrocketing because of a sand shortage, then your asset is actually a growing liability. The foundation of your wealth isn't as solid as you think. It's literally slipping through our fingers, one grain at a time. I know it sounds like a lot to take in, but this is the math of 2026. We are hitting the physical limits of our environment, and the market is only just starting to price it in. If the world's largest pension funds are starting to look at aggregate security as a risk factor, what does that tell you? Let that land. Here's where it takes a turn. I want you to really think about this. So, where do we go from here? Is it all doom and gloom? Not necessarily. But the business as usual model is dead. We are moving into the era of the circular economy. And this is where the big money is going to be made over the next decade. Venture capital is already pivoting. We've seen over $1.2 billion flow into alternative concrete and sand recycling tech in just the last year. Bill Gates and his Breakthrough Energy Fund are betting big on zero-carbon cement and processes that can turn desert sand into construction-grade material. If we can solve the marbles versus Legos problem through chemistry, we unlock an infinite supply. But, and this is a big but, that tech is still years away from being cost competitive. In the meantime, you're going to feel the squeeze. Your next home will be more expensive to build. Your city's taxes will likely go up to cover the cost of maintaining crumbling roads. Your electronics will have a scarcity premium baked into the price. Here's my advice. Stop looking at assets and start looking at inputs. In a world of physical scarcity, the companies and people who own the raw inputs, or the tech to recycle them, are the ones who will thrive. The era of cheap, infinite growth is over. We are entering the era of the great sand trap. Your wealth isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about the physical reality of the world those numbers are trying to buy. The foundation of your lifestyle is built on a resource we've taken for granted for centuries. We've treated sand like it was infinite, like it was free. But as we're seeing in the data, the bill is finally coming due. Next time you're at the beach, pick up a handful of sand. Look at those tiny grains. They are the most important, most contested, and most undervalued resource on the planet, and they're running out. The question isn't whether we'll run out of sand. The question is, what are you going to do when the foundation starts to shift? Because it's shifting right now, under your feet. Grain by grain. Let's see if we're smart enough to build something that actually lasts. Think about that next time you pay your mortgage. Here's what most people get wrong about this. I'll leave you with that.